The first film I'm going to talk about is called All the Time in the World, and for this film I took a role of production designer. All the Time in the World is about three different characters stuck in the basement trying to survive in post-apocalyptic worlds. They represent three different points of view about the future, as well as different generations, and show their real nature when found out there is only one kind of food left. According to restrictions, we have decided to not use any dialogue at all, but our scriptwriter got so inspired that she created a long script with a lot of amazing dialogues, what made us go for a longer film. I have decided to make a short version of it with minimum dialogue specifically for this project, but unfortunately this idea didn't go well, as the short version couldn't express the full idea and the film has lost its meaning. By my opinion, what we have done well was the non-verbal world building, as we have created the post-apocalyptic atmosphere. To come up with this idea, we were brainstorming for a couple of hours. As many of us like the post-apocalyptic vibes, we have decided to keep it and put a story in it. The story was created by all of us, as every member of our crew was giving new ideas and details during the brainstorm. And finally, our scriptwriter and director made the script based on our words. Our film atmosphere, colors and costumes were inspired by the film called The Road, as it gives a feeling of abandoned world and loneliness. Also, the atmosphere and the idea of different characters being isolated from the world was inspired by the film called The Hateful Eight. Also, the film called The Book of Ali helps us to create post-apocalyptic vibes, and the story about the guy trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic world gave us some ideas. Talking about cultural considerations, our film shows how our planet can become a bad place for living because of some global problems. We have decided to use diverse casts to show different cultures, gender and age. One of our characters was Spanish and was talking about his past before the apocalypse happened. So we used the Spanish accent to make it more realistic. Second character was a woman, showing her sensitivity of a woman's nature, and third character was an old man, representing the old generation. For narrative, we plan to use a three-act structure for the longer version of our film, but unsuccessfully it never worked out for a short version. So the short version looks more like a trailer. We also used Chekhov's gun theory with the last food can, and it was intended they would open the can in the end and find nothing. My responsibility for this film was to create a post-apocalyptic atmosphere, costumes, makeup and props to express the idea in its best way. This was the first time when I was trying myself as a production designer, and it was a great experience. First of all, I've spent a lot of time looking through post-apocalyptic films to feel the mood, to see how characters looked, and I was trying to imagine myself there and what I would do. I've decided to go with natural props, so I have asked my crew to keep all cinematic trash for set dressing. Many of props I've created by myself, like for example the old-looking calendar, dirt and sand, cardboard table, candles and bottles. Dressing up the set, I was trying to be a part of this story and imagine that I lived there for a while. This helped me to make the set dirty, leave fingerprints and footsteps all around, and make actors' faces look tired and depressed. I'm happy with the final result, even though I could make costumes much more realistic, but I was paying more attention to the set. Next time I will start preparing much earlier and pay more attention to every single thing. Looking at the film overall, I can say that unfortunately we failed presenting our idea to audience, however the idea was good and ambitious. Also, the second thing that didn't go well was the sound, as in the process of editing. My group found out that all the sound we recorded was very quiet, and we didn't have time to record the dialogues, so you can't really understand any words characters were saying. On the other hand, I'm very happy with camera work, acting and atmosphere. Creating this film helped me to learn how important it is to have an ability to express the full idea without many dialogues within a short time. The target audience for this film is teenagers and strong fans of post-apocalyptic survival stories. In general, I can say that even though the film wasn't great at the end, I had a good time and good experience in production design, and I really enjoyed it. The second film I'm going to talk about is called Hollowed, and I was a production designer for this one as well. Hollowed is made in the style of a classic horror films. The story is about a young couple, and it started with husband being awoken in the early evening by a branch tapping on the window. That what makes him leave the bed in order to fix it. When the wife awakens, she finds out he hasn't returned and sets off to find him. Downstairs, she sees the back door swinging open, so she goes to investigate and finds him in the garden. She sits him by the fireplace and goes to get him a blanket, only to discover her husband in bed asking, "Where did you go?" and a mysterious figure standing behind her. According to restrictions, we have decided to use a standard story structure, which contains 3 points: normality, the adventure, the return, change. From the start, our director and writer wanted to make a horror story. They worked on script together, and as soon as it was done, he has spent a lot of time with every crew member. He was practicing with DOP, doing test shoots, as well as helping to mix the sound and to find props needed. That is how our film got the final idea step by step. We helped each other by adding new details. Our film atmosphere, made in style of 60s, was inspired by a film called The Haunting, which was made in 1963, and the film called The Uninvited, made in 1944. We made our film black and white to reproduce the atmosphere of old horror films, as well as we found the location, which was the closest one to the 60s style. What inspired us the most was the psychological tension and the fear of unknown shown in 2 of these films, and that was the main aspect of our idea. We also looked at the sound in Arrival to create something similar in our film, as well as we looked at Dunkirk to use the Shepard effects and the sound. Talking about cultural considerations, we have put a lot of effort into creating the set in the 60s. We wanted to express the atmosphere by every detail seen in a shot, as well as clothing and general mood. My role in this film was quite important, as I was mostly working alongside director, scriptwriter and DOP. My responsibility was to create the 60s atmosphere on set and design every shot, as well as create looks for characters. I worked with director exploring old films where the 60s atmosphere was shown well, so I could recreate it. Then I had a couple of meetings with DOP to see the storyboards, lighting and tones. All 3 of us went to choose the location, and after I got the idea I had to look for props and clothing, and the last part was dressing up the set and actors. In general, I'm very happy with what I have done for the set dressing and atmosphere. The clothes I found for actors worked really well with the lighting, and the props created a needed atmosphere. Me, director and DOP found an absolute common language and understanding, which made it even more enjoyable. What didn't go well was that we messed up the light in one shot, so it looked brighter than it was meant to be, as it was night time in the scene. And I also forgot to change the time on clock, so we had to fix it by using photographs of the clock with different times on it. Next time we'll pay more attention to the details during the shooting, as the crew goes fully into the process, forgetting to move the props or even keep the storyboard away from the shot. Overall, I'm very happy about this film. Even though there were these little mistakes we had to fix, the result was really close to what we were trying to achieve. The biggest problem we had was that we have lost all the sound we have recorded on set, but my group managed to record ADR and other sounds once more, and it came out really well. The target audience for our film is 16+. As the old classic horror films are becoming popular among the new generation, we have decided that this kind of film would catch their attention. As my crew worked together professionally, we have fixed all the mistakes, so the result was good. It was an amazing experience in storytelling and production design on a new level.